Hello, everyone. It's time for our kids' Bible class portion of our Lord's Day videos that we've been producing. And so we thank you for joining us. We hope that you're having the best Lord's Day possible. If you're worshiping with your family or maybe meeting with a small group, we're just glad that we can share together and we can be together in some way, at least. We can study together from the Word of God. We are into lesson number 5, Mr. Joe, for the kids' classes. We've just come across the Jordan River. We've conquered the city of Jericho, and now we're coming to a new city, the city of Ai, which we'll show you where that is in a map in just a moment. But we're going to learn a really important lesson here the Israelites come to Ai. We're going to learn about the consequences of sin.
Yeah. You know, in the last lesson, when we talked about the children of Israel conquering the city of Jericho, I mean, man, that's such an incredible lesson or story, you know, to see God was with them and how they marched around the city for 7 days and the walls fell down, not by their power.
Right.
It was by the power of God. And so you can imagine that as they move on from the city of Jericho and go to the next city, they are thinking like, this is no problem.
Yeah, we're just going to march around every city and walls are going to fall down.
It doesn't work that way. So when they go on to this next city, you know, things were a little different. So we're remembering here, they've crossed over the Jordan River into the promised land, the land of Canaan, which was a good land given to them by God. And the Israelites had obeyed God very carefully when they were marching around Jericho and the conquering of that city. And God was with them fighting those battles. And so Joshua was providing good leadership. But then there was something that changed. When they came to the next city, the city of Ai, they didn't take the city. Things didn't go well at all. Now, it wasn't real far from the Jordan River to Jericho, about 6 miles or so, and it's not real far to Ai.
Yeah, that's right. I've got a map here, so let me pull that up, and I'm going to get a little closer here to the screen so you can see the map, and I'm going to point out to you where these places are. So here, of course, is the Jordan River that they've crossed over, and you see the city of Jericho right here. That's the city where they marched around the walls and the walls fell down. Now, just to the west of Jericho, you come over here, you see the city of Ai, a very small city, and that was the next one that they came to. So Jordan River, Jericho, farther to the west, the city of Ai.
You can only imagine that the people thought, we've got this. There was no problem at Jericho.
Small city, we're going to easily take Ai. But something happened.
In fact, even some of the soldiers said, don't send all of the soldiers. We won't need them all.
That's right. That's right. So instead of marching around the walls of the city like they had done at Jericho, Joshua said, let's send 3,000 soldiers up to Ai. Now, Mr. Joe, 3,000, that sounds like kind of a big number to us, but it's really not when you think about how large the army of Israel was. Right. Over 600,000 soldiers.
That's right.
And we're only sending 3,000 people. Ai is a small town. We don't need to send all of our soldiers. Let's just send a few and they'll go up and they'll take the city. But when they got to Ai, they lost. The Israelites lost to this really small city. And they couldn't believe it. Something was terribly wrong.
Indeed. You know, they lost. The soldiers in the city came out chasing them, and there was 36 that died, as I recall. 36 of the Israelite soldiers died, and they went to running.
Yeah. So Joshua is confused. He's angry. He's probably thinking, God, you promised me that nobody would stand before us. As you were with Moses, you would be with me. What's happened? Yeah. How could we lose? So Joshua knew that something was wrong, and he asked the Lord about it. And God told the Israelites when they came to the city of Jericho, God said, when you go into Jericho, you are not to take the plunder for yourself. All of it, he said, belongs to me. They were not allowed to take anything from the city.
So wait, now what does it mean that they could not take the plunder?
The treasure, the wealth of the city, the gold, the silver, the clothing, all of the nice things that belonged to the people who lived in Jericho.
So they couldn't keep it for themselves.
No, God said, it's mine. It's dedicated to me. Now, here's where we start to learn about the problem.
Is this where someone said, uh-oh?
Yeah, that's right. Joshua learned from God. God told Joshua that someone had stolen some things from Jericho, despite the fact that God said not to do that.
Right.
And the person who broke God's law had to be found out and punished.
So the sin actually took place back in Jericho.
That's right.
But that sin has followed them now to Ai.
Yeah, that's right. And God had a process of helping Joshua figure out who the guilty person was. And you can read about that, of course, in the book of Joshua in chapter 7. And this process involved them going from tribes down to clans to families, and then all the way down to one man whom God identified as the one who stole those items from Jericho. And God, in singling this man out and recognizing this is the man, his name was Achan, by the way. Achan was the man who was guilty of stealing that which was dedicated to God, that which was supposed to be given to God. God was teaching not only Achan that what you did was wrong, God was really trying to teach the entire nation of Israel that you are not to disobey me.
Because everybody became aware of it.
And everybody was affected by it.
That's right.
They lost the battle to the soldiers in Ai. That affected everybody.
So sometimes, if we do not obey God, well, then that's a problem between us and God. But sometimes it affects other people too.
Yeah. So, Mr. Joe, what did Achan do when he was discovered?
Well, when you look at Joshua chapter 7, and some of our bigger students, they could read that chapter.
Certainly.
And it would be good to read that. You know, I think he was upset with himself that he had sinned. You know, he realized that he had sinned. But you know, he did not actually confess that until it came all the way down to him, and it was pointed to him. And then it was when Achan said, I'm the one, I sinned. And so it wasn't like he stood right up.
You know, that reminds me. And maybe some of the kids can identify with this.
Okay.
Have you ever been in a situation where you did something wrong, you knew what you did was wrong, and maybe it was your mom and dad or maybe a teacher at school, they knew somebody did something wrong and they had a process to try to figure out who it was, and on down the line it goes, and you're standing there kind of scared because you know you're the one who did it.
You know all along that you were the one.
I think maybe that helps us understand maybe how Achan felt.
Oh, and then there were consequences. You said this at the beginning, that we have to think about and understand the consequences of sin. And what that means is if we sin, if we go against God, there will be a time and a point where God is going to make us understand that He's upset.
Consequences. That's kind of a big word, Mr. Joe. What do you mean by that?
Well, there is a result that comes. There is something that's going to happen when we do what is wrong, when we disobey.
And consequences can be good or bad, right?
They can be.
In this case, of course, it's bad.
Well, the consequences, if you obey, if they had obeyed in Jericho, was they would have taken the city of Ai.
That's right. They wouldn't have lost their next battle.
Sure.
All right. So it's discovered that Achan is the one who's guilty. What happens next?
Here's kind of one of the funny things about it, and I don't mean funny, ha ha. I mean funny. Achan knew all along that he had taken those treasures that were supposed to be devoted to God, and he knew it was wrong because he took them to his tent and he dug a hole and he put them under his tent. He hid them. He hid them. So it wasn't like he didn't know. He knew that what he had done was wrong, and so there were consequences that came. And God punished him and his family. That's the consequences.
Yeah. Well, But we need to say that it wasn't just punishment like go in timeout for 5 minutes.
No.
They died.
They died.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
killed. And the consequence, the punishment was very, very serious.
Yes.
You know, I learned a lesson from this, Mr. Joe,
Okay.
that I think is good for all of us to consider, whether we're kids or grown-ups. We cannot hide things from God.
That's right.
You know, Achan took the wealth, he took that plunder
Mm.
from Jericho, that treasure from Jericho, and he tried to bury it in the ground under his tent so nobody would know about it. And you know what? As far as the Israelites were concerned, nobody knew about it. But God knew about it.
God always knows. Sometimes we have to stop and think for a moment and realize that God is all seeing, He is all knowing, He is all powerful. He is the one who has made and created all things. He has made the earth that we live on. There is nothing that escapes the eyes of God.
So we need to be careful that when we do something wrong, we shouldn't try to hide it. We should be honest about it. We should be truthful about
Yes.
it. We should confess and admit what we've done and make it right before God and before those who were affected.
You know, sometimes it's hard to be honest about things when we know we've done something wrong. But it's always the right thing to do.
That's right. That's right. Well, what are we going to do about AI?
Oh, yeah.
So now we've got to go and fight against the city again.
Yeah, that's
a second
right.
time we're going to go and fight
I
against
wonder
it.
if they were afraid to go back because they had been beaten so bad the first time.
I don't know. Maybe so. But,
Yeah.
you know, once the sin was punished, God said to Israel and to Joshua, go to Ai again. And this time, there were some soldiers who hid and did a surprise attack on the city. Joshua got up early in the morning and he led the armies in the way God had told him. And the Israelites the second time went to Ai and they won.
They sure did. Because God was with them. And I think that's one of these important points.
Yeah.
You see, when God was with them, they conquered Jericho. When God was not with them and they went to Ai, they lost. But when the sin was taken care of and removed, and they went back to Ai, God was with them and they won.
When God is with us, we can win our battles.
Absolutely. And so this was an important lesson for Israel to learn, and in fact, it's an important lesson for us to learn too. But Israel, see, they've just gone into the land. Now they've gone to Jericho and Ai. There are many other cities that they have to go to and conquer. And now they know. God has shown them that when He is with them, no one can defeat them. But if He is not with them and they're on their own, there's going to be a problem.
That's right.
And that's a lesson for us too. If God is with us, we can have great strength and we will do well. And so we have to be willing to commit ourselves to God. And that's what Israel had to do as well. You know, before they went into the promised land, when Moses was still their leader, he reminded them about the things that God had told them and taught them through the years. And he told them that there would come a day when the law would be read to them again, that they would go up to the mountain in the promised land and to two different mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I say the mountain, it makes me think of Mount Sinai, but that was a long time ago and that's way to the south, remember? So now they're going to travel to the north. And there are two mountains, Mr. Ben.
Yeah, let me get that map
All
again
right.
and show them again. I'm going to stand up here and pull this map up again here. So we said here's the Jordan River, and here's Jericho, and here's Ai. But from here, from Ai, if we travel north, you're going to see two mountains here. There's Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. And these are the two mountains that the Israelites were standing between.
That's right. That's right. You know, there's an interesting story there that we'll talk about another time about how the people are all standing on the sides of the mountains and they could hear the law being read. But the most important thing for us to think about here and understand is that law that God gave them through Moses, that was so important for them. Not just that they had the law, but that they would listen to it and obey the law. And as long as they obeyed what God said, things will be just fine. They will do well. But at times when the children of Israel forgot what God said, things were not so good.
Yeah, that's right. So Achan in his disobedience to God brought about bad consequences for him and his family. And now we're moving from the story of one man to the entire nation of people, and they're teaching the same point. If you obey, you'll be blessed. If you disobey, you're going to be punished.
That's right. So you think about some of the important points from this lesson, like the covenant God had with his people, the importance of obeying that law. What about Achan? That's probably a point, and maybe even that's a name to remember. Achan. Yeah. I mean, that's a little different name too.
Hint, hint. That means it'll be on Wednesday's video.
And like on the map, we have some new places.
That's right. They'll be on there too.
That's right. That's right. And so we have several new things to think about this week. And so I hope you think about that as we go through the week. Parents, we need to help our children know and remember some of these important stories.
Yeah, and we need to be remembering our new memory verse too that you're starting this week. Joshua chapter 21. Some of you it's just verse 45. Others of you it's verses 43 and 45. But look at that new memory verse. Make your video of it, send it to me or to my wife, Miss Stacy, and we'll get those compiled into a video together. Thank you, everybody, for studying along with us. Have a good day.